Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well, happy, healthy, hydrated, and thriving, and all that good stuff. So sometimes I come across things that are too short to put into a video, or too short to make a video of. So these are three things that I thought were kind of random that don't really go together, but they're going to be in a compilation for this. So there's some variety here, so hopefully there's something that you like. If you like the video, please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And yeah, pull up a stump and thank you for watching. The following is another story from Alaska. Alright, this happened in the most recent August, which would have been 2018 when this was posted. It's the second weirdest thing I've ever seen in this state, and easily the most unsettling. I get 3 days free after doing 24/7 grandpa care for 2 months. I get two friends to go with me in the mountains for a few days. I leave Friday night, and I'm in my truck and pulling a trailer with two four-wheelers. The light finally fades at about 10 p.m. as it's mid-August in Alaska. I take it easy on the speed because the truck is a big old diesel. I get to the target highway about midnight. The pavement ends at the 21-mile-ish point. Everything to now has been pretty normal. A couple miles in, the road turns left with a small pull-off on the right side. The little Subaru is parked there facing the road, and it has an LED bar at face level. There's someone leaning on the hood watching us as we drive by. I'm really tired by this point. I'm not really concerned. I figure it's someone waiting for their hunting buddy since it's caribou season, so we keep going. The highway in is really rough in the fall. It's gravel, and all the heavy fall rains combined with the fall time hunting, all the traffic really tears it up after a while. So we're going 30 if we're lucky. The truck, trailer, and teeth are all going daka 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 from the washboards. There's a nice bright full moon out so we can miss the worst spots. We hit a real long straight stretch before the trailhead pull-off. We get about half a mile down the straight stretch, which is about halfway, and all of a sudden there's lights in our rearview mirror. It's the same car with that bright as hell light bar again, and this guy is hauling ass, 50 to 60 miles per hour or more. One friend is zonked out in the back, and the other one is just kinda spaced out. I point the light bar car out to him. He watches them in the side mirror, but doesn't seem too unsettled about it. The car is maybe 200 feet back when I finally pull into the trailhead. The car catches up about 10 seconds later, slows down to about 5 miles per hour, going by, obviously checking us out. So I parked the truck and watched them drive down the highway for a bit. I let out a deep breath, and I look over to the left at the other corner of this parking area. There's this SUV parked there, which seems like no big deal, but this is where it gets kinda way out of whack. I wake up my other friend and kill the engine. We hop out, and my instant gut assessment is that everything is screwed up, we're being hunted, we have to leave. My response to this novel sensation is, hey, there's something written on that SUV. I shine my flashlight on it. Moloch, written in the dust on the back window since it was parked. And I'm thinking, oh shit, what? My friends are stretching their legs. One has his AR out. They're both too quiet. We check out the SUV. The engine is still warm. It's been parked within a few hours. Only the front passenger door is locked. The shoes and sandals and shorts, comfy driving wear on the front seats. There's full packs and a compound bow in the back seat. There's a full cooler and a tent. Everything is completely untouched. There's a 6-month expired youth group sticker on the hood. Empty coffee hut coffees. Looks like a young couple came out here to camp. The friends are checking out this SUV. We're all independently reaching 10 out of 10 maximum alert. We look around the whole area and there's nobody there. No fresh tracks, except in the parking area itself. Another pair of cars with LED bars go by hauling maximum ass. We keep the rifles on them from cover as they go by. We give in to the gut feeling and leave. We camp 30 miles away on a different highway. But we come back in the morning and the SUV is still there, untouched. Still no sign of anybody around. The terrible gut feeling is mostly gone, so we take the four-wheelers and go 8 miles back around the mountains and stuff. Have a good time camping, get bullied by a caribou, come back the next day. Nobody was out there, Great lines of sight, nowhere to hide. The SUV is still untouched. The food in the back is starting to rot. I get back into town and call in the SUV to the troopers. The dispatcher goes, "Yeah, that's sketchy as hell. I'll send someone out." I call back 2 weeks later to see what came of it. They have no record of me ever calling in, but they have other calls that I've made in the past. I'm convinced that we were getting checked out, and the only reason why they let us be was that we had our ARs propped up on the seats, very visible. I never found any explanation for what I saw out there. All I know is that gut feeling I got when I got out of the truck was the spookiest thing I've ever felt, and all three of us felt it independently. There's something screwed up going on out there, I'm convinced. This is a story on the missing time phenomenon that I covered in a different video. This is from a commenter, H. Pruitt, and they say, "Back in February 2009, I was living by myself in the house I grew up in, which is in a small neighborhood. I had been talking to my boyfriend on the phone, and I told him that I was going to go pee and then smoke, and I would call him back because my phone was almost dead, so I had to leave it on the charger. So I went to the bathroom, and then I went outside and sat down on the step directly outside of the front door to smoke. I'm time obsessive, so there is a clock right by my front door. I went outside at 1:15 a.m. My boyfriend happened to live in the first house coming into my neighborhood, and during the winter, when there was no leaves on the trees, I can see his truck driveway from my front porch. I'm halfway through my cigarette, and I notice headlights in the driveway. He pulls into my driveway not 30 seconds later, and I'm thinking maybe he wants to spend the night, but he gets out and starts running up to me, asking if I'm alright, what have I been doing, where have I been, and that he's been so worried. I was like, "Dude, WTF, it's been less than 10 minutes since I talked to you." He pulls out his phone and shows me the time. It was now 3:23 a.m. It had been over 2 hours since we had gotten off the phone. I have no clue what happened. I went to the bathroom, stepped outside at 1:15, and smoked one cigarette that I remember smoking. It was a new pack and there was only one gone. I think the weirdest part for me is that it was February in Virginia. It was cold, and I was only wearing my pajama pants and sweatshirt. I hadn't put on my coat because I wasn't planning on staying outside long, but I wasn't shivering or even cold, considering that evidently I had been sitting out there for over 2 hours. So I replied and asked them what they thought happened during those 2 hours they missed. And they said, "I have absolutely no clue. I couldn't even pinpoint a time from walking outside until my boyfriend got there that my reality could have paused. I remember shutting the storm door so that I could sit down in front of it, lighting my cigarette. I even put my cigarette out when my boyfriend pulled in the driveway, so it's not like it burnt up in my hand. If I paused, then my cigarette paused with me, or whatever happened in between the time that I had looked at the clock and actually went out the door, maybe even the exact second I went through the door. But like I said, you would expect someone who had been outside and there about 30 degrees Fahrenheit wearing minimum clothing to be cold, and I wasn't. When I finally checked my phone, it had a decent amount of charge on it, and I had a bunch of missed text messages and calls, with my last outgoing text a picture of my cat being at 1:12 a.m. The house is near an airport, so we see our fair share of legit airplanes, random military planes, and Lifeguard 10, because the area is somewhat rural. We've never seen anything we would consider unexplained, and we've never had anything odd or suspicious happen around us, even though the house is backed by a farm and is based at the bottom of a small mountain. I can't remember anything like that happening before, nor has it happened since. So what'd you think about that one? Have you had your own experience of missing time? Let me know down in the comments. When I was looking for inspiration for this, I'd found like a list that had Buddy Holly in it. So when I was reading about Buddy Holly and stuff, I noticed that all three of them, Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Ritchie Valens, all had seemingly premonitions about what would happen later on during the Winter Dance Party tour of 1959. That namely being the tragic plane crash called The Day the Music Died, and was sung about in one of my personal favorite songs, American Pie by Don McLean. So to start off, for those of you who are not quite familiar with Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Ritchie Valens, I'll give you a little bit of background on them. So all three of them are considered to be pioneers of rock music, rock and roll music, and in some cases even country music. But for Buddy Holly, he was born as Charles Hardin Holly, Holly with an EY, in Lubbock, Texas, on September 7th, 1936. As a kid, he was nicknamed Buddy. During the Great Depression, his family moved residence a lot within Lubbock as his father changed jobs quite a few times. He was a Baptist and his family were members of the Tabernacle Baptist Church. And it's interesting to note that his whole family was pretty musical. Every member, aside from his father, could play an instrument and or sing. His elder siblings would often enter into talent shows and get him to play the violin, but since he couldn't play the violin, they would grease the strings so it made no noise, and then win the talent show. And he became interested in guitar after his elder brother got back from a tour in the Pacific during World War II. His older brother had bought a guitar from somebody else that was on tour, so he took an interest in guitar after that, and his older brother showed him how to play. And from there on out, it seems to be part of rock history, because he went on to do many songs. He went on to the Winter Dance Party tour with the Big Bopper and Ritchie Valens. However, shortly before leaving the tour, something very strange occurred. Both his new wife, Maria Elena Santiago, and Buddy Holly were shaken by vivid dreams and nightmares that they both had. These dreams would be almost strangely prophetic given the thing that happened. His wife, Maria, stated that in the dream she was standing in a vast open area, much like a farm. She didn't know where she was going, or how she even got there. Suddenly, she could hear shouting and people running. She thought that she would be trampled by the crowd, but the crowd parted around her, and she heard a terrible noise and saw a fireball falling from the sky, looking much like a plane that was on fire. It made a terrible noise as it crashed into the ground and left a crater. At this point, she woke up. Now, Buddy Holly, intending on trying to comfort her, told her of a dream that he had just had moments before. He was flying a plane and had left her on a rooftop and felt as though he would not be coming back for her. Neither of them knew why at the time that they dreamt these events. Eerily, it was just a short while later, the plane crash took place. Now, as for the Big Bopper, he was born J.P. Richardson on October 24, 1930 in Sabine, Texas. And if you're wondering why that I don't mention all their songs or play clips of them, I'm not really sure how the copyright system works with that, so I'm just not going to do it. But so as we know, JP was known for being a singer-songwriter and disc jockey. He was the eldest of an oil field worker, and he was a defensive lineman for the Royal Purple football team, wearing number 85. He graduated in Beaumont, Texas in 1947. He later took on a role of a disc jockey while attending Lamar College, where he was also doing pre-law and was a member of the college's band. And he had called himself the Big Bopper after he had seen people doing a dance called the Bop, so that became his radio personality after that. So at the time of this premonition, the Big Bopper was a DJ for radio station KTRM in Beaumont, Texas, and he did this while he was developing his career in rock and roll and as a songwriter and performer. So one thing he would do was, it was called a discathon, where they required the DJ to stay up for as many days as possible and play a non-stop stream of music for that entire time. And the DJ who was doing this was meant to do this until he collapsed, basically, or was carried out of the station. During this time, there were obviously breaks that were arranged so that he could refresh himself, cold towels, coffee mixed with adrenaline, and I guess an iron will were things that kind of kept him going for a total of 122 hours and 8 minutes, which is just over 5 days straight. So a man named Jeremy Boynton, who served as a radio announcer for KTRM, remembered the discathon and remembered a very exhausted Richardson, who had at this time been awake for slightly more than 3 days. Richardson asked, "You think I'm going to die?" And the guy replied, "JP, I think you are," and they both laughed about it. So just after the 5-day mark, he was indeed carried out of the station by ambulance, and apparently during the sleepless discathon, he started to hallucinate, including one point where he said he saw his own death, and is quoted as saying, "The other side Doesn't look that bad. Now, for Richie Valens, these premonitions also had an effect on him as well. So Richie Valens was born Richard Stephen Valenzuela on May 13th, 1941, which would have made him 17 at the time of the plane crash. Now, obviously, Richie had several hits, one of them being Donna, and one being La Bamba, which is the most popular one, or at least the one I've heard of the most. And he adapted that from a Mexican folk song that he added a rock rhythm and beat to it. This kind of stuff made him like a pioneer for Spanish-speaking rock artists. And something that is interesting about Richie Valens is that he was left-handed, but he was so eager to learn guitar that he mastered it with his right hand, which when I play guitar, I just have a lefty guitar, which are extremely hard to get, might I add. And when he was 16, he was invited to join a local band, the Silhouettes, which is a group that's kind of famous for their song Get a Job. He began as the guitarist, and when the main vocalist left the band, he assumed the position. In October 19, 1957, he made his performing debut with the Silhouettes. It's important, too, to note that Richie Valens was indeed scared of flying. Donna Fox, who was the subject of the song Donna, said that he would have nightmares about flying. He had a horrible fear of small planes and just planes in general. He indicated to her that he would just never fly. And that fear began the day of his grandfather's funeral, which he had missed school to attend. Shortly after the family returned to the Valenzuela home, there was an explosion. When Richie and his older brother, Bob Morales, looked into the heavens, they saw a plane plummeting from the sky, engulfed in flames. However, when his career eventually took off, he knew that he would have to get over this fear of flying, especially if he was going to go on these demanding tours. So just before he was meant to catch his flight to go on the tour, he attended church services with a friend. And they're quoted as saying, on his final night in Los Angeles, he'd gone to the Guardian Angels Church on Laurel Canyon Boulevard with his friend Gail Smith and prayed for a safe journey. He told his friend Gail that he was afraid of airplanes, but he was getting used to them and might even have to take one at some point during the winter dance party tour. Gail warned that it was snowy and storming in the north and asked, "What if you crash?" And he said, "I'll land on my guitar." Strangely, Richie Valens' mother was also said to have had a premonition concerning the death of her son on the winter dance party tour. So as you can see, all three of these members seem to have had like a clue or a premonition or a dream about what would ultimately be their final end. And it's weird how those things work, isn't it? I'm not really sure how they work or how they happen or what kind of provokes it, but I always find them extremely interesting. So, have you ever had a premonition of something that came true that you had a dream about? Let me know down in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed that little compilation of stuff. A lot of times I find things that are too short to make a video out of, so I'm just kind of putting them all in compilations every now and then, and this is one of them. I hope you enjoyed it. It has a good variety. There's a Alaskan story, there's Missing Time, and then there's like the Day the Music Died type stuff with Richie Valens, the Big Bopper, and Buddy Holly. So if you did like it, then please like and subscribe. Maybe you'll donate to the Patreon. It's okay. And yeah, I think I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. Have a good night.